From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Don Shipman. As the year draws to a close, local tax preparers are beginning to set up appointments with clients to start the tax filing process. And for some of us, filing our taxes is relatively simple. But for others, there may be more complex items to consider. So here to talk about what you can do to kind of ease the tax burden and what documentation you need when you're filing your taxes is Paul Mancinoni, a certified public accountant and tax attorney. Paul, thank you so much for coming on the program here. There are some new credits that we need to talk about specifically that came out this year, 2021, that people should be aware of, including the stimulus payments many of us got or advanced child tax credit payments. And I want to start with the child tax credit. For those who receive the advanced child tax credit, they should be getting a notification from the IRS if they haven't already. What is the new form that they're going to be receiving, and why is it important for tax filing purposes?
Well, good afternoon, Don, and thank you for having me. One of the things that we learned from last year, Don, with respect to tax preparation, is the IRS sent information out to corroborate what people received for either stimulus checks or, in this case, 2021, an advanced child tax credit. With respect to the advanced child tax credit, the form to be expecting, and it's new, it's coming out of the box for the first time this year, and it should arrive hopefully in January, is Form 6419. I cannot stress enough, Don, how important it is for taxpayers who receive the advanced child tax credit to maintain this form, because it needs to be put on the tax return by the tax preparer. And I must admit, and this is a good opportunity to mention, that last year a lot of people did not retain any documentation. It was new. They don't remember what they had for stimulus checks received. And without that information, it was impossible. We were basically guessing. And in many cases, we guessed wrong. So it's very, very important for people who receive this information, particularly Form 6419, to give it to their tax preparer. I cannot stress that enough, Don.
All right, so 6419. We want to keep that number in our head when we're filing. Who's eligible for the credit? Oh, I think we might have lost you. Can you hear me now?
I think on the WWLP side we might be on mute.
Let's try one more time. There was a question that
I think came. I cannot hear.
All right, let's try one more time. I want to know who's eligible for the credit, if you can hear me.
Oh, thank you, Don. I can hear you. Who's eligible for the credit?
Yeah.
Well, it's anybody with children who are deemed to be dependents. There's some criteria, and it gets a little complicated. But for example, if the child lives with the parent for more than half of the year, basically the rules that allow a child to be deemed a dependent. And the maximum credit, if the child is under 5, is $3,600. And then from ages 6 through 17, the credit is $3,000. And they would have gotten that in periodic payments throughout the course of the year. If they didn't get the advance credit, they'll be able to take the credit in full when they prepare their tax return. And that's why it's so important, Don, to retain Form 6419, because if the tax preparer is under the impression that no advanced payments were received, he or she is liable to give the client the full credit, and then a letter is going to come and cause confusion. And that's the type of situation that can occur. And that's why this year, more than others, in my opinion, it's very important for people to retain this data.
And then there's the expanded child dependent care credit. So who's eligible to file for this credit?
Oh, thank you. This is very interesting, Don, and I'm glad you raised the question. This credit is always available for people who work, who have to have dependent care for their children. Except this year, the credit was not only increased, to $4,000 per child, $8,000 if two or more children. But here's the kicker, Don. It's what they call a refundable credit. That is different. The prior credit would reduce your tax to zero. This credit will reduce your tax to zero, and the excess can be refunded to you. It's called a refundable tax credit, and it is a unique opportunity for 2021. And again, for people who are working and need dependent care for their children at home or out to a school or some third-party provider, it is absolutely crucial, Don, that the taxpayer retain this information to give to their preparer in order for them to be able to calculate the credit and get this much needed relief to these parents who are in that situation. It's a very good opportunity for 2021, and people should be aware of it. Thank you for asking, Don.
And then we were talking about the stimulus checks. A lot of people receive those. Do we have to report that money?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Same thing. It's very, very similar to Form 6419, except it's another form. It's really just a letter from the service that should be reminding taxpayers of what they received. There weren't as many third-round stimulus as the first two in 2020, but a few people did receive this. And again, if you qualify, your preparer may give you this amount on your return when in fact it's not warranted because you may have already received it. Again, this year, Don, more than others, requires a little more self-help on the part of clients, 22 viewers, who actually benefit from either the advanced child tax credit or the stimulus. Great question, Don. Thank you.
We're going to continue our conversation once we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We're back now, 22 News in Focus, talking about tax filing preparations with Paul Mancinoni, a certified public accountant and tax attorney. You've been doing this for a while now. Tell me about maybe the different tax problems that you've encountered over the years. What advice do you have that you're giving to your clients when it comes to these different issues?
Well, if we're talking, well, from a preparation standpoint, Don, what we do this time of the year is we start giving our clients an organizer. That really helps them think about the type of things that we're going to need in order to help them do their taxes. Clients can run into trouble simply by miscommunication or not communicating with their preparer. So a document like an organizer, and most preparers are in a position to provide organizers to their clients, really goes down the laundry list, Don, of items and questions to be answered by the taxpayer or client that will really help the preparer in getting a good understanding of the client and the questions that they should ask. That for people who don't get them, they should be requesting that, in my opinion, from their tax preparer. Now, these documents are available now as they start compiling information. That's where troubles begin, Don, by the lack of communication. And a document like an organizer or a list from the accountant, tax preparer to the client of the type of items they would need is really a good starting point.
And can people find that information on the IRS website as well? Is there like a checklist there for people if they don't want to go through a tax preparer?
Well, you know something, Don, I have learned as a CPA and an attorney, I represent a lot of people who get examined. And I think the preparation software that's available either on the IRS website or at your local office supply store or online is quality software. But if you don't know how to prepare a return, you can use the software incorrectly by ignoring laws that you don't know about. And that's where people can fall into trouble. And so for a simple return, I really think learning how to do your own taxes, especially young people. I've always encouraged that, and I believe in that. People should know why a good portion of their income is going to the government and do all they can to mitigate that. I think that's a very valid thing to do. But at the same time, going a little bit beyond that, holding a couple of jobs, you start getting involved maybe with rental properties. I think now it's getting beyond what your average layperson should be doing, and that's where I've seen people kind of fall into foxholes and stuff. And so I try to be careful in situations like that.
Understood. And you mentioned, we've talked a lot about the child tax credit, that 6419 form. What are some of the other tax reporting documents that we should be receiving from the IRS?
Thank you, Don. Well, these mostly should be coming in and around January. And I would suggest that W-2s from your job. If you are a subcontractor, you should be receiving 1099s. If you're a subcontractor, even if you're not receiving 1099s, you should be still compiling all of your income for reporting. I wouldn't rely just on the 1099 if you actually make more and didn't get 1099s. Also in January, Don, you'll be receiving interest income statements if there's money in the bank earning interest, investment statements if there's anything that's in the stock market. Until the past month and a half, it's been pretty strong, so there may be some activity there. And finally, distributions from retirement plans known as Form 1099-R, and I would throw your year-end Social Security statement in that same group, as it is a retirement distribution. And finally, this isn't really due in January, but for people who have investments in partnerships or what we call pass-through entities, there's a very important document known as a K-1, and that should really be appearing in March. But those are the documents that you really should be on the lookout for. I'll add to that, Don, specific to Massachusetts, the Massachusetts healthcare form, the HC 1099, which you need to show the state of Massachusetts that you had adequate health insurance to avoid being penalized. There's more than that, but those are the general items for, I think, your typical 22 viewer.
And I like that you brought up rental properties, because there are a lot of people who own maybe a 2-family home or something like that, and they are maybe renting out the upstairs. What information is needed there? Because like you said, that can be a little bit more complicated.
Very much so, for a whole variety of reasons, Don. But now's the time, to look back over the prior 12 months and calculate what was received for rents. What is the portion of the real estate tax on the home that applies to that property? If it's a 2-family, then all of it. If you live in one unit in the second floor, the first floor, the other floor is rented, then arguably 50% of the real estate tax, a portion of the homeowner's insurance, the mortgage interest. These are the type of things that you should start compiling now. If a client or 22 viewer, a taxpayer, Don, is able to summarize the rental income and the expenses related to that property and give it to the tax preparer in one simple sheet, I can't tell you how helpful that would be in the preparation process. If you give that same tax preparer your checkbook and say, you do it, well, you just added 2 hours to your engagement, and you're going to see that reflected in the fee. So that's why I say it's not a bad idea to take the time to try to compile that information, simply for self-preservation from an administrative cost standpoint. Great question, Don.
I say you don't just take all your receipts and say, here you go. You don't want to do that.
Don, if I can be so bold, I gotta defend tax preparers because we all have the proverbial shoebox client.
Yes.
I got to take a step back. I no longer have shoebox clients. That's how burdensome that is. Yeah. The tax laws have gotten so complicated. And for the past 2 years, Don, when COVID struck, the tax season was extended to July. Last year, government didn't want to take any chances. They extended it to May 15th. This year, after 2 years of practitioners being a little spoiled, including me, we're back to April. And that is a lot of work in a ridiculously short window. And I think being unprepared and giving a shoebox to a tax preparer who's in that tight a window, basically saying, you figure out what I need, I think is a little aggressive.
Yeah.
And I would advise taxpayers not to do that, because there's fewer and fewer tax preparers out there. And I think the day may be coming when they start getting a little choosy. So I think people should be careful with the shoebox and have some compassion for your local tax preparer.
I like that. I like compassion. All right, we're going to return right after this. You're watching 22 News in Focus. We're back here now, 22 News in Focus, and today we are talking about tax filing preparations with Paul Mancinoni, a certified public accountant and tax attorney. So some people, like we've been mentioning here, opt to do their own taxes using popular software or using the booklet sent by the IRS or even the state. With the constant changes in tax code, it may be worth it, though, to pay someone to do your taxes in order to make sure that you don't run into any issues down the road. So a few questions here, Paul. What should people look for when considering hiring a tax preparer, and what qualifications?
Thank you, Don. Well, I would suggest that you're looking for competence, you're looking for experience, and you're looking for qualifications. And with respect to experience, that's simply, how long have you been practicing? Qualifications really give you the competence. And qualifications, as far as the IRS goes, they recognize CPAs, they recognize attorneys, and they recognize what's known as enrolled agents. And that is, those are for people who pass the test that's administered by the IRS, giving them the qualifications to practice before the IRS. Those are the three generally that are most accepted by the IRS. We can represent people, we can fill out a power of attorney and speak on behalf of a client to the IRS. And those are the three that I would suggest generally for tax preparation.
Yeah, what about security? I know a lot of people worry about their information being stolen, and I'm not saying necessarily from your tax preparer, but what if they're using some sort of software and there's a breach of some sort? So are there questions about security protocols that you should be asking?
Yeah, Don, that's the question of the day, because tax return refund fraud is still with us. Yeah. But not only that, your typical tax preparer has client data that is extremely sensitive, as sensitive as healthcare data. And in the wrong hands, that can be a disaster. And so in addition to talking about competence, experience, and qualifications, it wouldn't be a bad idea to actually visit the CPA, or at least try to learn in this COVID virtual world that we're in, try to learn and ask questions about security. And I'll give you an example. A CPA that's in a high rise with a secure building where nobody can just get up the elevator, that strikes me as a pretty safe environment to keep client files. But a strip mall, storefront, plate glass windows, where you can see the files in back of the room, that seems to tell me that you want to ask more questions about security. Also, the computer server, you want to ask questions about, firewall and what technology that they use, and whether or not they use a computer company to monitor and do backups and things like that to make sure that client data is safe. I think that is extremely important. And doing a tax return for a client, as far as I'm concerned, Don, is only half the battle. I'm holding extremely sensitive data on behalf of that client. And we we all, as practitioners, take that responsibility very, very seriously.
All right, so you find out, you get notified that you're going to be audited. What do you need to do in order to prepare for this?
Thank you, Don. Well, what you need to do is not panic, because
everyone's going to panic.
Letters of examination, Don, are related to somebody forgot to put something on their tax return.
Yeah.
A 1099 didn't make it in the mail, and that certainly has happened during COVID with respect to the post office. And if you didn't get it, you easily forget about it, didn't put it on the return, but the IRS got a copy of it. Well, they're going to send you a letter saying that you owe money, or you're being audited, or they're asking more questions because you forgot something. Those are very easy to put away. When you get a letter that says, bring your shoe boxes to us on such and such a date, that's different. You want representation for that type of case, because now they're going to be asking you questions face to face. And in situations like that, the best advice as a CPA attorney at law who only works in tax matters will tell you, you need representation there. If for no other reason, Don, but to be a buffer, to accept the questions, communicate with the client, formulate an answer, and then respond, as opposed to giving an off-the-cuff answer. When I give presentations at colleges, that is paramount to proper representation. Be there instead of the client.
We're going to have the final words after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You've been watching 22 News in Focus, and today we've been talking about tax filing preparations. Yes, it's that time of year already. With Paul Mancinoni, a certified public accountant and tax attorney. I want to thank you for coming on the program and providing all of this valuable information.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching at home. If you missed this program, you can watch it in its entirety at our website at wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, have a good day.